Hi, and welcome back to my shop. I'm making some progress on my live edge haul table project. In the last episode, I ended up joining the front and back aprons to the legs. And I've sort of referenced that I have a little bit of a twist to this project. And I have my pieces here cut for the side aprons, and the side aprons just need to be 9 inches long. And what I've decided to do is, instead of just joining these aprons like I did the front and the back, I'm actually going to make these into hidden drawers. So instead of just making these pieces of cherry the aprons themselves, these are actually going to be applied false fronts to a drawer. And there won't be any drawer hardware, it'll be kind of a hidden drawer. So if you just pull the apron out, it'll reveal the drawer, but once it's pushed in, it'll just look like an apron. So they're kind of hidden secret drawers. So instead of just doing mortise and tenon or loose tenon joinery for these, I'm actually going to have to do stretchers like you would for any ordinary drawer. So I'm going to show you how I'll do that. For the top stretcher, I'm going to use the same joinery that I would pretty much always use, and that is a dovetail, or really a sliding dovetail. So this will actually just overlay on top of the leg like that and slide down in. So I'm going to show you how I'll cut that joint. So over at the table saw, I've got my dado stack set up, and I'm going to use that to cut the rabbet that goes on the bottom of this sliding dovetail. It just helps register everything better, and it means I don't have to cut the matching socket nearly as deep. And I've also got a backer board here so that I don't have any blowout at the end of the cut. I am actually using cherry for my stretchers, which is really not necessary. I could use any secondary material. I just happen to have a couple sticks of cherry in my scrap bin that work perfectly for this. Then over at my router table, I've got a dovetail bit set up. And I also have this right angle guide that I'm going to use. And that's really just because I need to push this over with the stick standing up. And so I need something to support it in the back. And then I'll just make one pass on either side, and then that'll leave me with my finished dovetail. Now, the other trick here is that this drawer is actually going to have to meet the leg at an angle, because that leg does slope down. I don't want to leave a bigger reveal at the top than I do at the bottom. So that means that for my stretcher, when I slide it in, it's also going to have that same angle beveled in the front face of it so that that drawer will close tightly against it. Now, this is not necessarily the same angle as the inside. You remember, this was a 5-degree angle here, but this is actually a steeper angle coming down on the outside of the leg. So I'm just going to take my protractor here and lay it down on top and see if I can get close to what that angle needs to be. And it's going to be a curve, so I'm not going to be able to get it perfect, but it just needs to be pretty snug against the top there. So if I lock that down, take a look, it's more like a 9-degree angle. So I just need to now put a 9-degree bevel on the front face of both of these stretchers. And since I've already got my table saw set to that 9-degree bevel, I'm also going to put the bevel on the tops of my drawer fronts, because the drawers are going to be in at an angle, and so I need to be able to put that same bevel on the top so that it looks square. Now, going through this exercise has actually revealed a little bit of a challenge for me. So what I've done, if I take the drawer front away, I've put both stretchers in place where they would be on the side of this leg. And the challenge here is that the opening between the top and the bottom stretcher is only about 2 inches. So that means I'm going to have a fairly narrow drawer. And when you consider that once I put the drawer bottom in there, it's only going to leave me with about 1.5 inches of depth inside that drawer. Now granted, this isn't really meant to be a drawer to hold a lot of stuff, but I do want it to be a little bit wider than that. Now, since the apron widths are pretty much already set in stone, there's not much I can change there. But what I can do is reduce the thickness of my stretchers here, and then that'll give me a slightly wider drawer opening. So what I'm going to do is just go to my planer and remove maybe 1/8 of material from both stretchers, and then that'll widen up my opening just a little bit more. I'm back from the planer now, and I've realigned everything on the side here. And what I ended up doing is 2 things. So if I remove the drawer front here, first, the drawer fronts used to be almost 7/8 of an inch thick. I just kind of milled them thick as possible. And they looked a little bit too chunky for kind of this more delicate drawer that we're going to have. So I took this material down to 3/4 of an inch, which I think will work better. And then I reduced the material on the stretchers from roughly 3/4 of an inch down to 5/8 of an inch. And you can see right away that it even has a better visual appeal. It looks proportionately better in terms of the width of the stretchers versus the drawer opening. And if I put my ruler down here, I can see that I get almost a full 2.5 inches of drawer opening now. I think that's just going to work better, just that little extra width. It'll help with the proportions as well as just the physical depth I'll be able to make the inside of the drawer. Now I just need to determine where the layout lines need to be for the mating socket for that dovetail. So I've just clamped the leg into my twin screw vise. I then put the drawer front up there, leaving that little 1/8 of an inch reveal, and then I can put my divider behind it. And this is where having that little rabbet makes a big difference, because I know that I have that registered perfectly. So if I just hold that down now, take my marking knife, I can make my lines. Now that I have all of my dovetail sockets laid out, I'm going to cut these just like I would any half-blind dovetails in a drawer or what have you. Okay, I've got all of my sockets cut now. So I went and did one final test fitting, dropped this in, took my drawer front, slid it over, and found that it's virtually flush with the side of the leg all of a sudden. In fact, it's even a little bit proud. And it's the same way every single joint. And it was really a little bit of a head scratcher because I couldn't figure out how I managed to screw up every single joint by the exact same amount when I measured very carefully. Well, it turns out it wasn't my measurement that was off. It's that when this dovetail starts out where I first measured it, I do have that reveal right there. But as I push down into that socket, it pushes the piece out because we've got that bevel on there. It's essentially acting like a wedge. So that's no good. I can't have the drawer sides actually proud of the legs. That would look really crazy. So I have 2 choices. Either I can remove some more material from this edge here, or I can make my drawer fronts even thinner. So I think I'm actually going to do a combination of both and sort of split the difference. So I'll take a little bit more material off the front of my rail, and then I'll also plane these down maybe another 1/8 of an inch. They're still, good solid 3/4 of an inch, and they're really just false fronts, so they're not structural in any way. So really didn't anticipate that problem at all, but fortunately I have a couple of solutions I can rely on to remedy that. So after taking off basically a half a saw blade from the front of the stretcher and then 2 passes through my planer, I come back, line everything up, and now I get that nice, consistent reveal. So, disaster averted. Now that I have all of the joinery done for my top stretchers, I need to now figure out the joinery for the bottom stretcher. So here's a piece of bottom stretcher stock. I've already got that 9-degree bevel put on the front face of that. And what I'm going to do is use twin tenons. So I'll have a tenon on either side of this that will then go into twin mortises. And the trick here is that not only do I have to have this line up with the bottom of the drawer front, but I also have to make sure that the bottom stretcher stays completely parallel with the top stretcher so that that drawer will be able to slide in and out smoothly. So to do that, I just built probably the simplest jig you could possibly build, just a block of wood with a 9-degree bevel on the top. But more importantly is that these two sides are completely parallel. So I'll be able to just sneak that block in there and use that to align my bottom stretcher. And then I'll know that both are completely parallel. So with everything aligned, then I'll just go and trace around the stretcher. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my two tenons apart on the end of each of these bottom stretchers. So I've got a dado stack in here that's roughly, I think 3/8 of an inch or 5/16 of an inch wide. And I'm just going to run that through once in either direction. That'll make sure that I have a nice centered split between the two tenons. And then I'm going to try to do a 3/8 inch tenon on either side of that. And then I'll just take whatever the waist is and then I'll remove that as the outside shoulders. And then I'll use that tenon, or those cutout tenons, to then lay out where the mortises need to be on the legs. Now that I've got the kind of main tenon split, I'm just going to take my 3/8 inch setup block here and just lay that right against the inside edge of that tenon. I'm just going to make a pencil mark there. And I'm going to go back to the same tenoning jig and setup and just trim off both sides until it's exactly 3/8 of an inch. And then I know I have the right setup and I'll complete the rest of the twin tenons. After laying out the tenons against the leg, I'll use my drill press to hog out most of the waste. Then it's just a matter of cleaning everything up with a mortising chisel. With any luck, it'll fit on the first try. I got all my joinery done now, so I went ahead and I dry assembled the piece. And this is a kind of an exciting part of any project because for the first time I get to actually stand back and see what this thing's actually going to look like assembled. And I'm really happy with the results. I do think that 5-degree angle adds a really kind of interesting character to the piece, and it does meet that nice curve pretty effectively. And I do have my opening for my drawer. I double checked and everything's parallel, so the drawer should slide in and out nicely. Next steps, I can really at this point just need to give this a final sanding, and then I can actually glue this up, and then that will let me see the final opening size so that I can actually go and build the drawers. So that's what I'll be doing next.